Hey guys, thanks for clicking on this video. As you can tell by the title, some of the things that we're going to talk about in this video were the early signs of autism that were missed by teachers, nurses, and doctors. We've had him tested for autism 2 times, and I want to relay some of the information that was given on both the first testing and the second testing because they were entirely different. I do have to preface this with saying I am not a doctor. I have no medical degree. I am an autism mom, and I have done a lot of research on autism since my son was diagnosed. If you believe that you or your child have autism, you need to get a professional medical diagnosis. This is just information for me to share with you on our experience getting Jesse diagnosed with autism. So a little backstory on Jesse. Jesse was in an early intervention program where a specialist actually came out and visited with him once a week until the age of 3. Within that time, Jesse hit most milestones as expected. With the way that he played with blocks and cars, they had mentioned that those are signs of autism and that we might need to consider getting him tested for autism. I asked them what is the difference between autism and OCD, and they said that those are kind of a couple of overlapping traits, that it could go either way. I said once he hit his 2nd birthday, that if they still thought that he had autism, I would get him diagnosed. But because he was still speaking, he knew a variety of words, he was showing emotions, he was a very happy, smiling child, he enjoyed physical contact. They did not think that at the age of 2, he needed to be tested. Jesse went to pre-K and kindergarten and actually 1st grade all at the same school. The school wanted to have him tested for ADHD. They did not like the fact that Jesse did not want to sit in his seat and did not want to complete his schoolwork. It's not that he didn't know the material, it's not that he couldn't do the work, it's that he would rather sit on the ground beside his desk than actually sit up in his chair and do work. When they did give him a paper to complete, he would rather color and scribble on the sides of the paper than actually go through and write his letters. So because Jesse was having these difficulties in pre-K and kindergarten, while he was in kindergarten, we actually sought out a doctor that could test him for all the neurological issues. This included ADHD and autism, learning disabilities, the whole 9 yards. When we did the test in kindergarten, there were 3 parts. There were the teacher's reports that they filled out, the parents' reports where we filled out a ton of questions, and then there was also the actual testing with the doctor. So the doctor did a whole bunch of tests, basically checking Jesse's IQ and ability to remember. She also got a lot of family history and asked a whole lot of questions about our entire family, his background, everything that you can imagine. I have no idea what the teacher's report said, but I do know when we completed the parent portion of the paperwork, he did not qualify for ADHD. The doctor that observed him and did all the testing said that she wasn't quite sure what was going on with him. However, she thought Jesse had ADHD, and when I asked her why she thought he had ADHD, but the forms that I filled out and submitted to her came back not having ADHD, she told us from what she observed during the testing, she believed he had ADHD and needed medication. Since I was uncomfortable with the idea of medicating him unnecessarily without adequate test result, but the fact that she couldn't explain to me what symptoms Jesse had to qualify for ADHD and the risk of medication just didn't seem worth it. I was uncomfortable with her approach of he has ADHD from what she observed, and he needed to be medicated. It did not sit well with me, and I did not feel like putting him through something that might potentially do him more harm than good. I asked her what other options we had besides medication. She said that medication was really the only thing that we could do for ADHD, so I asked about therapy. She recommended play therapy as the only alternative option for medication for ADHD. So we tried play therapy. We actually tried play therapy with 3 different therapists over the next 4 years. He stayed in there for, I think the shortest amount of time was 6 months, and that therapist left. So for the rest of elementary school, Jesse was smart and he knew the material, but he was definitely struggling to complete his work. Teachers had to work with him one-on-one or have assistants work with him one-on-one to actually be productive. He wanted to make friends. He was desperate to make friends, but he really struggled to maintain any type of friendship. He was a people pleaser. He really enjoyed making any adults happy, but he definitely needed the extra help to complete his schoolwork. As parents, we found it really frustrating that he could not complete a single assignment at home for his homework without sitting beside him and going through each question one by one with him, because he knew the material, but he wouldn't do the work. He was still a very happy child. He did really well through elementary school. Once we started hitting later grade school, like 4th and 5th grade, that started changing. You could notice a lot more of a difference in how this was affecting him. 4th grade, he really didn't have a lot of friends. The friends that he was making, it was more of a frenemy bully situation than an actual friendship. And school was getting harder and he was struggling a lot more. 5th grade was really difficult for Jesse. And halfway through 5th grade, he had started failing every class, receiving all Fs, and we knew we had to do something. So we ended up actually taking him out of state to get tested. We knew something was wrong, but nobody could put a point onto what it was. His school teachers thought that he was immature and needed to be held back, but we had actually already held him back in pre-K because of potty training issues, that he wasn't ready to start pre-K. So he was already the oldest kid in his class, and we didn't want him being 2 years older than the other kids. We also struggled with the fact that we knew he was smart, he was able to understand the material, but he just wasn't applying himself, and we could not figure out why. Once we got him tested in Columbus, Ohio, the doctor was actually able to explain the entire test to us and explain all the results and how they actually applied to Jesse. Once we were able to understand his reasons for having autism and ADHD and dyslexia, everything made perfect sense. It all came together. All these things that we were struggling with for him to put together finally had an answer and made sense, and that's helping us to be able to get him treatment and resources that he needs to be successful. As his parents, we knew there was something different and we couldn't figure out why he wasn't able to do what we knew he was capable of doing. His teachers thought he was immature. Previous doctors only looking at ADHD and medication as a solution and not being able to explain ADHD to us and what his symptoms were to qualify for ADHD really shouldn't have gone on this long. We should have been able to figure out at least one of these diagnoses before his 12th birthday. My hope is that sharing all of this with you will help to be able to remember to advocate for your child. You are your child's biggest advocate. So if you feel like something's not right, don't be afraid to question it or get a second opinion. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye.